Before I start my sermon today, I just wanted to take a moment and let you know that during this time when we are separated and our lives are turned upside down by this pandemic, that I am holding you all in prayer, that I miss you, and I hope that you are coping well. I know that I am sometimes changing moods hour to hour or day to day at least. This is not an easy time for anyone, and I want you to know that I hold you in prayer and that God is with us in these very difficult times. God bless you. In the name of our one holy, true, and living God. Amen. On this Palm Sunday, this Passion Sunday, we are reminded that God did make his lamb selection, but it wasn't grilled or roasted with mint sauce. No, instead, he chose a spotless lamb, just 33 years old, who walked the countryside, healing, forgiving, and restoring to fellowship those who in his society were given up. The poor, the prostitute, the adulterer, the tax collector. These are the people that Jesus was passionate about. This was the burning driver, the Holy Spirit, that landed on him like a dove at his baptism and then drove him out into the desert, only to bring him out passionate, on fire, proclaiming freedom to those held captive, recovery of sight to the blind, restoration of strength to the lame. His mission was to proclaim the Jubilee, the good news to the poor, the year when society was to be cleansed from injustice, debts forgiven, slaves freed, and land returned so that all might provide for themselves once again. These are the things that Jesus was passionate about. The other side of Jesus' passion lies in the root of the Latin word for passion, passeo, which means to suffer. All other meanings of passion have been derived from this one. The passion includes the sufferings of Jesus as well. His willingness to suffer is central to his identity as the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one of God. Jesus is central to our Trinitarian and triune understanding of who and what God is. God is creator, redeemer, and sanctifier. We say it in the Apostles' and Nicene creeds. The early church saw Jesus suffering and death and remembered the 4 servant songs of Isaiah. For them, Jesus was the servant of God, as it says in Isaiah 42, who a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. Who in faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged till he establishes justice on earth. It is this Jesus who, as it says in Isaiah 49:6, will be a light to the Gentiles, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. It is Jesus who did not turn away from God's will in the Garden of Gethsemane and instead offered his back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who pulled out my beard. I did not hide my face from mocking and spitting. It is Jesus who trusted and had ultimate faith in God, because the sovereign Lord helps me. I will not be disgraced. Therefore I have set my face like a flint, and I know I will not be put to shame. He who vindicates me is near, as Isaiah writes in chapter 50. Many in the early church saw Jesus' trial and crucifixion as confirmation of this servanthood. Because it is written in Isaiah chapter 53, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is dumb. So he did not open his mouth. By a perversion of justice he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? For he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. They made his grave with the wicked and his tomb with the rich, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. You see, only God could redeem such a horrific and torturous death. Only God's righteousness could take such a death and use it to achieve God's purpose, to redeem the broken human family. Again, Isaiah writes, "Through him the will of the Lord will prosper. Out of his anguish he shall see light. He shall find satisfaction through his knowledge. The righteous one, my servant, shall make many righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will allot a portion with the great, and he will divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out himself to death." It's written in Isaiah 53. Jesus of Nazareth is Emmanuel, the Prince of Peace, the Lord of Lords, only through his willingness to suffer. You see, Jesus is passionate. He's not stoic or apathetic. He has come to Jerusalem, knowing what is about to unfold, and is ready, willing, and able to do so. If you think about it, nothing in his background might think you that he was prepared for this. He was born in a tiny, obscure village in the Roman Empire, the child of a peasant woman and a man who scratched out a meager living making doors and window shutters for homes. He grew up in still another village, Nazareth of Galilee, working the same job his father did before he died, while he was still a boy. For 3 years, he was an itinerant preacher. He preached every time he had an opportunity, whether it was on the road or a mountaintop or in the valley. He never wrote a book, never held an office. He didn't go to college or seminary, go through the ordination process. He never visited a really big city, never traveled more than 200 miles from the place in which he was born. He never pastored a big church. But here is what he did do. He humbled himself and didn't take the place of honor nor the seat of judgment, and didn't regard himself as equal to God. As a matter of fact, he emptied himself. He forgot. He did not remember. He counted others as greater than himself. He forgave. He let the past be in the past. He took up and took the form of a slave, a servant, washing his disciples' feet. The same one who calmed the raging sea, who spoke in parables, who turned water into wine, who ate with sinners, had time for everyone, the lonely, the poor, the depressed and possessed, the folks with no name, men, women, and children, those disenfranchised by their society. This simple prophet, who spoke a comforting word to 2 friends on the death of their brother Lazarus, cleansed the temple with a whip of cords, driving out the money changers. This was perhaps more than anything else, probably what got him killed. You know, it's the age of 63 now. I now see that he was just a youth, a young man at 33, when he died at the hands of the Romans, by the hand of Pontius Pilate, who washed his hands, for he was afraid of the violence of the mob, after Jesus' own high priest, Caiaphas, and the king of his people, Herod, demanded his death. How did it come to this? For a man born among the animals and laid in a manger, because there was no room for him and his family in the inn. Do we only celebrate his death and ignore that he gave sight to the blind and healed the lame and took time to talk to women and let a woman sit at his feet as a disciple? And another touched the hem of his garment in faith that she would be healed. How he saved a woman from stoning, healed a man possessed by a legion of demons, and cured 10 lepers. Are we the equivalent of the 12 dim-witted disciples that he tried and tried and tried again to teach and still refused to see the light? Jesus' suffering on the cross is the world's suffering. This world's pandemic of sickness and death and disease, its senseless violence, desperate poverty and malnutrition and soul-slaying, ignorance, bigotry, and hate are the reasons that Jesus suffers so. But the passion of Jesus lies in his compassion for those who suffer, who face death from an infection or the barrel of a gun, who will die neglected because they have no one to care for them and no ventilator or medicine to comfort, heal their bodies. For those who have no place to lay their head at night. His compassion for those who have no food to gnaw the quiet, gnawing growls in their empty stomachs, and have no education to lift their minds from above bigotry and hate. See, this is where it happens. My suffering is Jesus' suffering. Jesus bears my anxieties, my sadness in living in a world where the will for ignorance and fear have literally torn us apart from one another these days. Jesus takes my many failures as a man, a priest, a father, and a husband, which want to haunt and possess my soul, and lifts them from me. Jesus takes this wretched pile of walking contradictions to his cross and lifts them up as he is lifted onto the cross. And that is what changes all this. That's what gets us out of this mess. This is what will make it better. When Jesus' suffering becomes my suffering. You see, I'm redeemed when caring for broken bodies and broken hearts and broken souls becomes the daily habit of my life. My suffering lifts, and I am filled with gratitude when I realize that so many must contend with so much more suffering than I. I am saved when peacemaking becomes the only option in a world filled with violence. God's redeeming work is done when I lift up my life by filling empty bellies with food and empty minds with knowledge and hearts with the warmth of love. Pray, my brothers and sisters, for the courage to take up this cross and to take that first step to a new life filled with Jesus' passion and the people he was compassionate about. And who knows, this coming Friday may be good for you and for me and for the sin-sick world as well. Thanks be to God.